Hi, my friends, and welcome to episode 11 of Echoes of Curiosity. I have been sitting with the word destiny for a while now. It's one of those big and kind of weighty words that I wasn't sure if I even wanted to build an episode around, but honestly, I am going to put that ambivalence aside and and talk about it. I mean, uh, at first I was thinking, who am I to talk about something that sounds so grand? But yeah, it's calling me. The word is destiny. It's a very intriguing word. And meanwhile, for Thomas, life has left me in one of those in between chapters. The kind where you're uprooted, living out of a hotel for a bit, surrounded by the half packed bags and all those shifting plans. It's that brief bit of chaos where nothing feels settled, and yet something in me knows exactly where I'm supposed to be. And maybe that's the point. Destiny doesn't always show up with clarity or ceremony, for that matter. Sometimes it arrives with disruption, and through disruption, all that unexpected timing, chapters that you didn't plan for, but somehow figured out that you needed. And honestly, this little stretch of upheaval, and you see part of it here behind me with this backdrop that's normally full of books. It's brought new tone, new clarity, and maybe some new energy to this episode. What is destiny if it's not the unfolding of life through unexpected settings, unexpected timings, and the unexpected chapters? That's the version of destiny I want to explore with you today. When I think about destiny, my mind doesn't go to something predetermined. No, it goes to a year, and that year was 2013. Um, I'd been living in Texas for over a quarter century, teaching, settled, and basically enjoying life there. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was a life that I built, and I was proud of my accomplishments. But in January of that year, my father passed away after a long struggle with Parkinson's and dementia. His passing didn't just mark an ending, it awakened something in me. A pull, maybe, I guess. Anyway, it was something I couldn't ignore. My mother at the time was 89. Then she was still healthy, still very much herself. But suddenly, the distance between Texas and Pennsylvania felt wider than it ever had. I didn't really make a pros and cons list. I I didn't strategize. I I didn't even really fully understand it at the time. I I just felt something in me say it's time to go home. Looking back now, that moment feels like, well, less like a decision and more like a recognition. It was as if my life was somehow steering me toward the next chapter of who I was becoming. It wasn't fate, and it wasn't obligation. It was more of a kind of inner knowing, a sense that my path was shifting, and all I had to do was follow it. As I think back now, yes, I was loving my job. I truly was. I was teaching in an environment that was suited for my style of teaching, and I was working with some amazing students. So yeah, I was loving my job, and I was loving the comfort and familiarity that Texas had given me for nearly 3 decades. But there was also an undercurrent running beneath all of that. I don't want to make this about me, but I really can't ignore the fact that I had just come through a series of relationships that left me questioning whether partnership was even part of my future. It was kind of a resignation, maybe. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't thinking about it. I mean, if anything, I felt like I'd kind of been bruised by the whole thing, actually. So when that pull toward the east coast began, I guess it wasn't really about starting over romantically, not at all. It wasn't about finding someone new. In fact, I think the idea of a relationship wasn't even on the table. Not not then. I honestly thought I might be heading into a long season of singleness, blessed singleness. And I was making peace with that. The one constant in my life at that time was my girl Ava, my beautiful German Shepherd who'd been with me since 2004. She was 8 then, loyal, steady, and just such a source of comfort. In her own way, she was part of that destiny too. She made the move with me, without hesitation, just step by step all along the way, and that was quite a drive in a in a Jeep without air conditioning in June. Yeah, it was quite a trip. I'm not sure exactly how many states we traveled through, but we made it to Virginia. So here's what I understand now, looking back at that moment in 2013. I wasn't just moving across the country. I was choosing love over fear. I may not have had the language for it then, and I didn't know what my mother would decide about her future, and I had no idea what my role would be in any of that. I didn't know how any of it would unfold ultimately. But I trusted. I trusted that being closer to her would, I don't know, make her decisions easier. And I think it was that trust that really carried me forward. When I look at all of this through the lens of A Course in Miracles, I can see it even more clearly. By that time, spirituality, um, which, yes, it included reading from lots of inspirational sources, um, but I guess spirituality had become part of a daily ritual, more so than it had in the past. The Course teaches that destiny isn't a fixed future. It is not a fixed future. It's the natural unfolding of who we already are. Um, it's a return to love, a place in us that's always been there, waiting for that willingness. I'm reminded of the groundbreaking 1992 book by Marianne Williamson titled A Return to Love. I'm in a book study with that book, revisiting that book right now. It's amazing, amazing book. Anyway, the moment that I said yes to that inner pull, the things that felt like obstacles at the beginning, they just began to soften. Not to disappear, of course, but just to soften. The path didn't become easy, but it became clearer. And that clarity, I now understand was the beginning of my destiny unfolding. When I arrived in Richmond, I was welcomed with such generosity, such generosity. My sister Amy and my brother-in-law John, they opened their home to me without hesitation. They had built a full life there in Richmond. Careers, routines, 2 nearly grown children. And yet they made space for me to land, to breathe, and ultimately just to find my footing there. But even with that support, those first few months, whew, they were hard. They were hard. I couldn't find suitable employment right away. And I guess the discouragement of that surprised me. I had uprooted my life and followed this inner pull. And suddenly I was there sitting in my sister's home wondering if I'd made a mistake. But then, slowly, I will say slowly, things begin to come together. I found, with help, a position with the local school district teaching English as a second language to adult students from all over the world. It was meaningful work, deeply human work, and it felt like a door opening exactly when I needed it. That Thanksgiving, our family gathered at my sister Mary's home in Maryland, and in the middle of that celebration, my mother made an announcement that none of us really expected. She said she wanted to sell our childhood home in Pennsylvania and move to Richmond. And I think it was in that moment that everything clicked. The pull I had felt months earlier, the one that I couldn't explain, uh, suddenly made sense. I hadn't just moved toward her, I had moved ahead of her. I had unknowingly prepared the way. And here's the part of destiny we don't talk about enough. It doesn't always feel magical when it's happening. Sometimes it feels like work. Real, exhausting, logistical work. And man, I am ashamed to admit I I'm not built for that. Exhausting. Selling our childhood home was a monumental task. Sorting through decades of belongings, deciding what to keep, what to let go of, what to move. It wasn't simple. None of it was simple. And it certainly wasn't graceful. It wasn't destiny in the poetic sense. Not at all. It was family meetings, planning, disagreements, and of course the logistics, and a lot of heavy lifting. And I will say that my sister Amy did most of that heavy lifting. And there was a challenge of finding an apartment that could hold both my mother and me, close enough to Amy's home that she could feel supported, but still giving mom her independence. So that search took time. It did. And it was definitely more than a few moments of frustration. Definitely. Looking back, I can see that destiny and strategy were working together. They were. Um, the inner pull brought me to Richmond, but that unfolding required planning and coordination, and absolutely required a willingness to keep going, even when it felt messy. Destiny was not a straight line, it was a collaboration. Um, yeah, a collaboration between guidance and effort and intuition, a great deal of intuition, and practicality as well. And of course, love. Love is an incredibly valid word here, and it was definitely an ingredient. It was the work of making a life for my mother and myself and my family. So somewhere in the middle of all that, in the middle of the moving and the planning, and eventually the settling, um, and the caregiving that I was committed to, and a beautiful relationship rekindled with my mother. So yeah, along with all of that, something unexpected happened. Love just found me. it wasn't the same kind of love that, or thought of love, that I chased in my earlier years, all those years in Texas. It wasn't the kind of love that came with the emotional exhaustion. Um, I'd had it with that. And it wasn't love that came with uncertainty. I I think it was a completely different kind of love. Different. It was steady and it was kind and it was far more grounded in so many ways. This was Eduardo. And when I look back now, I can see that every step from the pull that I felt in 2013 to the move, to the challenges, to the caring for my mother, all of it was quietly leading me toward him. I wasn't looking for a partner, and I wasn't trying to create a new chapter. But destiny, in its quiet way, was already writing it. It was already writing my new chapter. So when I look back at those years now, the move and the caregiving, the job search, and the family logistics, all of it, all those long conversations, and even those moments of tension, which were part of the story. I see something I couldn't see then. Destiny isn't effortless, my friends. It isn't tidy. It certainly doesn't arrive wrapped in clarity. It asks something of us. It asks for willingness. It asks us for trust and patience. Definitely patience. It asks us for the courage to keep going even when that path feels messy or uncertain. Underpinning that, there's this thread, a quiet alignment that keeps pulling us toward the life that is ours to live. For me, that thread led to Richmond, and it led to caring for my mother. It led to rebuilding my life in a new place. And it led unexpectedly and beautifully to Eduardo. And here's the thing about destiny. It doesn't stop unfolding just because we think we've reached the destination. In 2015, I thought the story had settled. I thought I had arrived at the life I was meant to live. I had work that I loved. Family was close. My mother's safe. And I had a marriage now that felt steady and true. But destiny had another chapter waiting for me. And that was a chapter I could have never predicted. It would test everything. my faith, my marriage, my body, my sense of identity. Less than a year after Eduardo and I married, I would face a health crisis that would keep me hospitalized for nearly 3 months. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying and life altering. And ultimately, one of the most profound spiritual experiences of my life. It certainly did not feel spiritual as it was happening. That recognition came much later. But that, my friends, is a story for episode 12. For now, I will leave you with this. Destiny is not a straight line. It's a conversation between love and fear, between guidance and effort, between who we've been and who we are becoming. And sometimes the most important steps are the ones we take without fully understanding why. And we're trusting that clarity will come later and that love will meet us somewhere along the way. Stay curious, my friends. See you next time.